It's final Marchtasy, everyone! The month I'm dedicating to Final Fantasy videos to celebrate not only the release of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, but also Chocobo GP. Videos on both of them will be coming later this month. Hopefully. Now, what better way to start a month about Final Fantasy than with a video dedicated to RPGs that are specifically not Final Fantasy? I may need brain surgery. Legend of Dragoon, or as Sony likes to call it, what is that? Is a really cool RPG made by Sony themselves for the PS1 that many overlooked in favor of Final Fantasy. The pre-rendered backgrounds and character models are so aesthetically pleasing to me, and graphically it almost looks like a step between Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. Despite FF8 predating it by almost a year, battles are a lot more involved due to the additions, which are quick-time events that can make your attacks more powerful, and you'll get more of them by leveling up your characters. Some of them can be pretty tricky to pull off. The characters are all really fun, my favorites being Lavitz and Metter, and the interactions between them can be pretty entertaining. It's just too bad that the poor translation tends to make dialogue feel weird and unnatural. The biggest downside for me is the lack of free roaming on the world map. All locations are tethered together like in Final Fantasy Mystic Quest or the level select screen in Super Mario World. It just feels like a big downgrade compared to the other 3D RPGs on the PS1 that gave you full control on the overworld. It also has limited inventory space. Very limited inventory space. And most items do not stack. But the saddest thing is that aside from the scrapped PS All-Stars DLC, Sony continues to act like this game never existed. So I wouldn't get my hopes up for a re-release or a remaster. If you've got a PS3, then it's only $6 on the North American store, and for a 50-hour RPG spanning 4 discs with fun battles, great soundtrack, and exciting locations, I would definitely recommend it. Everyone knows about Chrono Trigger. Why am I even talking about it? Time travel, Akira Toriyama, robot, frog, music that makes other game music sound bad, fast-paced combat, triple attacks. Hell yeah! I'm doing Dragon Quest a huge disservice by only giving a brief highlight in this video. I'm really gonna have to make a dedicated Dragon Quest video in the future, because after Final Fantasy, this is one of my favorite franchises. While the stories are never on the same scale as Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest makes up for it with consistently good gameplay that's only tweaked slightly between entries, unlike Final Fantasy that has, since Final Fantasy X, been experimenting with different battle systems in every mainline entry with mixed results. The characters are fun, the worlds are great to explore, the monsters are always a joy to look at due to Akira Toriyama being much better at creature design than he is at character design. Hot take. So there are a lot of elements in these games that make it easy to overlook the lack of a grandiose story, even though some of the stories are pretty great. My favorite in the series is Dragon Quest IV, followed by 7, but 5 and 8 are also fan favorites for good reason. And if you're new to the series, then the most recent game, 11, is a great starting point for beginners. Some of the games are easily accessible on modern day consoles, but others will require a DS or 3DS unless you want to settle for the mobile phone ports. So I'm not going to mention Pokemon in this video because no one really needs to shout out the highest grossing media franchise in the history of the known universe. I do love Pokemon though, but they're more of a baby's first RPG. Except for Legends Arceus. That game's pretty rad. So how about a game that has creature collecting like Pokemon with more of an emphasis on story, characters, and general RPG mechanics, and also cutscenes by Studio Ghibli? That's kinda all I have to say. I haven't played this game since it came out in 2013, but I remember it being good.
Someone with such a big smart brain get hypnotized like a little bitch, huh?
So the next 3 entries, along with Legend of Dragoon, are games that I didn't play until 2021. I was in such a big RPG mood last year, and Nier Replicant satiated my hunger with perfection. I played the sequel, Nier Automata, briefly some years ago, and now that I've played Replicant, it's definitely something I'll have to come back to. Among the RPGs I played last year, Replicant was the clear standout when it comes to story and music. The way Yoko Taro makes games is just so unlike any other, and his approach to game design makes him one of the few real visionaries left in the industry. The story is pretty weird, yes, and it can be pretty hard to follow at points, but if you're really paying attention, then everything should flow pretty smoothly. That's only if we're talking about the standalone story, however, because this world has so much lore that just isn't explained at all, and it's scattered between novels, comics, drama CDs, stage plays, and it just gets very overwhelming after a while. The wiki has good summaries if you want to read up on it all. The lore can get very deep. Now let me gush about the music. This has become one of my favorite video game soundtracks. Keiichi Okabe really has brought most AAA games to shame, and his compositions, combined with vocals from Emmy Evans, make every location hauntingly beautiful. The vocals are performed entirely in a made-up language known as Chaos Language. It's something of a mix between various real-world languages, and seeing how the world of Nier is a post-apocalyptic real world some 1500 years in the future, who could say how our languages will have evolved in that time? Oh boy, here we go. I played Xenoblade when it came to the Wii in 2011, and I remember liking it a lot, but I gave up on it because I couldn't beat this boss in the snow area. Fast forward to when I played the Switch remaster 10 years later, and I fell head over heels for this game. It finally dawned on me just how much I didn't really understand how the game was meant to be played when I was 16. The way I approach games has also changed drastically over the years. If I see an available side quest in this day and age, you bet I'm gonna pick it up and do it, despite how lackluster the reward may be. But some side quests give you weapons and a bunch of XP, so the grind never stops. I was so overpowered by the end that every fight became very trivial, which I don't mind because I like being rewarded for all the time and effort I put into a game. And being overpowered is my favorite kind of reward. The world of Xenoblade is possibly one of the most creative settings I can think of, with humans living on this dead giant and fighting a war with mechanical beings living on the neighboring mech giant. Nopons are there too, and I love them. Riki is my favorite. It gets pretty crazy after the halfway point, but I'm not gonna spoil the fun. It's an experience I would recommend to anyone. Xenoblade 1 and 2 are both on the Switch, and with a third game coming later this year, there has never been a better time to get into this fantastic series. Here's a game I slept on for quite a while. Despite how much I loved the HD 2D graphics, back when it came out I wasn't really in the mental state for these long and slow RPGs. But I'm better now, and thank Bruce Almighty, because this game is so good. The gimmick of playing as 8 different protagonists with their own stories is alright, but the downside is that these characters who share a party never actually interact with one another, or scarcely do outside of optional party chat moments. Each character has their own story with recurring side characters, and each chapter can be accessed at any point in the game. You could finish Olberic's story without starting any of the others if you wanted to. It would take a lot of level grinding to make him powerful enough to do it solo, but I think it's an option for those who want to do it. It's almost like 8 shorter games in one package, because aside from sharing some towns and locations, there isn't any overlap that I'm aware of, except for the epilogue chapter. That's my biggest gripe, but here's what hooked me on this game. The battle system is simply amazing. It's unbelievable that game designers at Square Enix are still making tweaks to the old turn-based battle system to make it feel fresh and fun. The system takes some inspiration from Bravely Default with BP that lets you do multiple attacks each turn, and it even has some Final Fantasy X vibes. But oh good lord, the soundtrack. The music in the overworld and towns is pretty good and does what it needs to, but they had no right to go this hard on the battle music. When a game makes you excited for random encounters just so you can hear the music again, then it's doing something right. Octopath Traveler is currently on PC, Switch, and Xbox, and a spiritual successor named Triangle Strategy is coming out very soon. Square Enix is also doing remakes of Dragon Quest III and Live Alive in the same HD 2D style. Okay, I feel like I've been babbling on forever, so here are a couple of quick ones. Trials of Mana, Bravely Default 2, my game of 2021, Tales of Grace's F, The World Ends With You. Goodbye.